Quote, "Surely there's something to be said for drawing a circle around our attention and remaining within that circle. But how large should this circle be?" Such is the question I've been exploring here in relation to fictions that are once confined in location but capacious in implication, circumscribed in incident yet global in ambit. It's the question that Smith entertains in her latest work to date, The Embassy of Cambodia, 2013. Located again in Willesden, this miniaturist story centres on the fortunes of Fatu, who has journeyed from the Ivory Coast to Ghana, Libya and Italy before working in England, in fact, as a domestic servant in the wealthy Derwell household. Treated like a skivvy by the family, Fatu finds respite in visits to the neighbourhood swimming pool, a routine that takes her past the Embassy of Cambodia and the visiting women who intrigue her there. Quote, "No doubt that there will be those who will be critical of the narrow, essentially local scope of Fatu's interest in the Cambodian women from the Embassy of Cambodia," remarks Smith's chorus-like narrator. "But we, the people of Willesden, have some sympathy with her attitude." Raising the issue of accountability in the most everyday terms, Smith assesses what it means to engage across racial difference, while at the same time acknowledging that, quote, "If we followed the history of every little country in this world, in its dramatic as well as quiet times, we'd have no space in which to live our own lives or apply ourselves to our necessary tasks, never mind indulging in occasional pleasures like swimming." Hence Smith's investment in the scale of recognition, in finding the right circle of attention, despite the prejudicial inhibitions that seem normalised in this community. Quote, "We are from Willesden. Our minds tend toward the prosaic. I doubt there is a man or woman amongst us, for example, who, upon passing the Embassy of Cambodia the first time, did not immediately think genocide." How to go about drawing that circle of awareness, responsibility and reciprocity is also an interpretive question for us, as much as for anyone else. For it's a problem Smith poses not only to her West Londoners, but also to her readers everywhere. Following Fatu's diurnal patterns of reflection and obligation, as she subsists with limited resources and endures few vocational opportunities, Smith compels us to reflect on the range of our sympathetic involvement and on the capacity of fiction nowadays to extend that range. The localism of Smith's story is itself deceptive, for, quote, "In Willesden, as the narrator notes, we are almost all new people, though some of us, like Fatu, were, until quite recently, old people, working the land in their various countries of origin." For Smith, as for Lahiri, the challenge is not only to see how localist and cosmopolitan outlooks or behaviours might practically coincide, but also to articulate what it means to have a right to a local history, as Smith herself has put it on this slide, even if many of us have arrived here only recently and from every corner of the globe. Although they operate at opposite ends of the stylistic spectrum, Lahiri and Smith join a growing body of 21st century writers who move on an affective spectrum between cultural dislocation and vulnerable hospitality, committed to local arenas for contesting identity that are far from inconsequential. But what does this all amount to for us as critics, and in a sense as profilers of 21st century writing? That is, how might the localizing strategies I've just described not only affect the way we map those settings that seem most important to the novel's social scope today, but also how can they be reconciled with the assumptions we make about the critical function of fiction per se? After Frederick Jameson and other theorists of postmodernity, we're accustomed to entertaining grand conjectures about literature's political reach. We're also accustomed, thanks to Jameson, to thinking about fiction's relation to culture in symptomatic terms that leave little room for considering the relation between what Derek Atcher has called the labour of creation and the created artefact, or for considering that authorial ambitions are still valid in our accounts of artistic results. And finally, partly due to the pressure nowadays to make research matter beyond narrow specialisms, and partly due to the reluctance of some major presses to take on books that are too regionally specific, we're accustomed as well to reaching beyond the nation in the service of a transnationalist ethos guiding both selection and argument. All of which is a far cry from the idea of taking seriously the advantages of, quote, "drawing a circle around our attention and remaining within that circle." Such a move might seem thoroughly unfashionable, or at least incompatible with making bold political claims about why the novel matters. But perhaps the very matter of fiction, the stuff that might make it indispensable today amid the unprecedented range of competing media forms, is precisely its ability to localise our attentions in a world of distractions, to resist the critic's instrumentalising tactic of invoking fiction in the service of ideology critique, and to stage moments of reflection or reciprocity, as Smith and Lahiri do, that are no less ethical for being so inconspicuous. Smith herself has talked recently about the essential hubris of criticism, Whenever I write criticism, I'm in such a protected position. Here are my arguments, here are my blessed opinions, here's my textual evidence, here my rhetorical flourish. One feels very pleased with oneself. Fiction has none of these defences. Such is the distinction between the grandeur of the critical act and the kind of obliquity, economy, even vulnerability we might value in fiction upon which that critical act is performed, which would suggest that maybe something of the modest scale of the localist narratives I've examined here might usefully carry over into critical practice. Of course, we should celebrate the fact that post-millennial literature still has the potential to oppose the status quo in ways that edify us. But our refusal to overstate the effect of that edifying opposition could be one step towards an ethics of response that militantly resists the kind of instrumental thinking now so endemic in many institutional visions of the humanities. Thanks.